Today's lesson is going over solving by factoring. So the day before we worked on the zero product property, and that's what we're going to continue to work on. So your warm-up was to put these equations into factored form. And the last one we're actually going to cross out. That was just a repeat. So we have our 6, and I need to figure out factors of 6. Well, I know the factors of 6 are 3 and 2, and 6 and 1. So now I can figure out what could be in my parentheses. Always have x first. Well, let's see. I need to get a -5 and a +6, meaning both of my numbers need to be negative. So we have 3 and 2 and 6 and 1. If they're both negative, -6 plus a -1 is actually going to give me a -7. So I know it can't be that one. So I know it's got to be 3 and 2, because -3 plus a -2 will give me a -5, and -3 times -2 will still give me a +6. So each of these are the same, but the signs are different. So now I need to figure out, okay, well, what plus another number will give me 5? Well, I know that these are both plus, so they both need to be positive. Well, +6 plus a +1 gives me +7. So this one is 2 +3 and a +2. And for our last one here, we have both negative numbers, meaning one number needs to be negative, one number needs to be positive. So let's see, if I have -3 plus 2, that's going to give me a -1. If I have a -2 plus 3, that's going to give me a +1. So it has to be 6 and 1. Well, let's see, -6 plus 1 gives me -5. So I know the negative has to go with 6 and the positive has to be 1. And there's your warm-up. But let's move on to today's practice. Today again we're practicing the zero product property, meaning figuring out and setting each part of these equations equal to 0. So I'm going to take this parenthesis, set it equal to 0. I'm going to take this set of parentheses and set it equal to 0. So I have x plus 6 equals 0, and I also have -x plus 1 equals 0, because I want to figure out where it hits the x-axis. So on the left side here, the opposite of a +6 is a -6. So I know one of my answers is -6. If I put a -6 here, these are going to cancel, give me a 0. Whatever I get in here, it doesn't matter because it'll cancel and get 0. Now for this one, I need to subtract 1. And I'm actually not done because there's a negative in front of my x. I could just erase it, but I know there's a -1 in front of it. So I'm going to divide by -1. Remember, if there's just a negative sign, there's an invisible 1 between the negative and the x. So negative divided by negative is a positive, and you get 1. So let's try the next ones. Remember, we're going to set each parenthesis equal to 0. Now if they weren't in parentheses, which you'll see in our next example, you have to turn it from standard form into factored form, which again, this is factored form. So I'm going to subtract my 1. I get 3p. P isn't by itself, so I need to divide by 3. P equals -1/3 is one of my answers. For the other side, I add 3, bring my 8p down. P isn't by itself, so I need to divide by 8. those don't turn into a nice even number, so I get 2 fractions for this answer. So now let's try, instead of factored form, let's try standard form, putting it into factored form. Alright, we got our 2 standard form, our standard form. We're going to put it into factored form. Again, the reason why is because I want to know what each x-intercept is, and it's a lot easier to do it separating them, putting them back into factored form. So let's see, I have an 8 here. I need to know my factors of 8, which are 4 and 2, 8 and 1, and that looks it. Yep, those are my factors. So what I'm going to be looking at is I'm dealing with a positive and I'm dealing with a negative, meaning I'm dealing with one of each in my parentheses. So dealing with a negative and a positive. Okay, so we need to break up this 2x squared. Now I could just put x here and x here, but this time I actually have a number for my a term, this 2. So what I need to actually do is break it apart. Well, the only factors of 2 and if it's of 2 is 2 and 1. So I'm going to put 2 in the front and put a 1 here. Now I'm ready. So let's see. I'm going to start foiling it without getting too crazy, because I know 2 times 1x is going to give me that 2x squared. But I need to get super close to this 6x. Well, if I do 2 times 8, that would give me 16. It would be way too far. But I could do it times 1. So let's see. We're just going to plug and chug. So just watch, and then we're going to put them in. So let's try 8 and 1. Well, let's see. It has to be higher. So let's see. If I put my negative sign here, because I want to subtract it, and put my positive here, if I FOIL it, I get 2x squared minus 2x plus 8x minus 8. Oh, hey, look! 8 minus 2 is going to give me that 6x. Holy cow! So, in this case, my first try was super lucky. But we get 8. 8, 7, 6. And that's what we're looking for. A positive 6x and a negative 8, which we got. It's always good to double check to make sure you did it right, so that way we get the accurate x-intercepts. So now I'm going to cut these in half, right? Set them both equal to 0. And I'm going to subtract 8. If I divide by 2, I get x equals a negative divided by positive is a negative. 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And I should get a positive 1. So that's where it'll hit on my x-axis, at negative 4 and positive 1. Sometimes there's 2 answers, sometimes there's only 1. So let's try this one now. I have a 3. Well, the factors of my 3 are 3 in itself. Okay, cool. So I know that 3, I'm dealing with 3 and 1. Same thing with the 8 term over here. I'm dealing with 3 and 1. I always like to put the bigger number in the first set of parentheses, just to keep things organized, but you can do whichever you want. You can flip it backwards, but make sure when you distribute that you distribute correctly. So since these are both negatives, that means I'm dealing with one negative and 1 positive. So I'm just going to write myself up a note up here that I'm dealing with both. So now I can try it out. I need to remember that my term that's getting multiplied by this 3 needs to be negative. It needs to be the larger end. So I know that this needs to be negative and this needs to be positive. The reason I know is because I have a negative 8. I'm not going to get from to 8 by adding 3 times 1 or 1 times 1. So let's see. Let's put the 3 here. So, and then we put the 1 there. Let's see. 3x squared minus 9x plus a 1x minus 3. Let's see. Negative 9 plus 1 is going to give me a negative 8. Oh, hey, we actually did figure out this one right away by using mental math, going, okay, so this number right here, my 3 needs to be multiplied by some number to get me a higher number, using reasoning skills. So now we're going to cut these in half. I have 3x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. If I solve these out, I'm actually going to get a fraction for my first one, which is negative 1/3. And for this one, I'm going to add 3, so I get x plus 3, a positive 3. Sweet! Now I'm going to show you a different way. It's called an AC method, if this was super confusing to you, of how to pull out especially this 3x and this 3 to match up to get our middle terms there. So I'm going to show you. It is called the AC method. So remember from our form here, this is going to be A, this is going to be B term, and this is my C term. So when it says AC, you're going to take the number from A and C and actually multiply them together and get some numbers. So I actually have 6 times 2, which gives me 12. This is what I'm going to use for pulling out my factors. So I have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, 4 repeats, 5, nope, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to look at these and I'm going to try to get to 7. Well, 1 plus 12 actually gives me 13. 6 plus 2 is actually going to give me 8. 4 plus 3, oh hey, there's my 7. So I'm going to use these two factors. Since they're both positive, I know they're going to be positive. So what you're going to do is take your A term down here, 6x squared. I'm going to take my 3x, because I broke up my 7x into 3x. And bring my 2 down here. And my 4x. Okay? Now I'm going to group them together. So I'm going to take it and cut it in half here. And I'm going to go, okay, what do these have in common? Well, they both have a 3 because they're both divisible by 3. And they both have an x. So what I'm actually going to do is draw my parentheses. And I'm going to pull out a 3x from both of these. So 3 times something will give me 6x squared. Well, that is going to be a 2x, and my plus 3x times something will give me 3x, which is just a 1. So since I know this factored term right here, I know my middle term over here is going to be the exact same. These parentheses need to be the exact same. So if I pull something out from this 4, I'm going to get it multiplied by a 2x. Well, they both have a 2 in common, so I'm going to pull out a 2, and let's double check. 2 times 2x gives me 4x, 2 times 1 does give me 2. So now both of these match. I'm going to bring them down and just have them as one factor. Then with these right here on the outside of the parentheses, I'm going to bring them down into their own set of parentheses. And now we can solve for 0. So if I solve for 0, 2x plus 1 equals 0. I subtract 1. If I divide by 2, I know one of my x values is negative 1/2. And for the other one, I subtract 2. Divide by 3, and I get x equals negative 2/3. I'll make a second video for the second one, but I want you to try it with this AC method.